Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mother Load. This is our special space, not exclusively, but especially for moms, where we are talking, we're learning, we're laughing, sometimes we're crying, but we're always speaking very openly and very freely about all things motherhood and the loads that we carry every single day. I'm your host, Jennifer Bullock, and during each episode, as we have in the past, we're going to continue to discuss some topics that I think may be important to you or probably someone close to you, friends or family, that you're able to share a little bit about what we learn with them. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition, which I know it's a very broad topic, and for some of us, it can be really triggering, especially if you're dealing with some picky eaters, which is a topic we are going to touch on as well. Some of us and our children may have a really complicated relationship with food. You want to give them something that's really good for them. They're not willing to try it. I have two kids at home, and they both have very different opinions and palates when it comes to food. So Harper is my 5-year-old. She started kindergarten this year. She is open to trying anything, and I mean anything. This girl is eating like salmon patties and crab cakes, and she just is willing to try. She wants tacos and all kinds of stuff. We can get her to eat fruits and vegetables, no problem whatsoever, and she's always been that way. However, I have an 8-year-old, Noah, who is an incredibly picky eater, like to the point where I have actually consulted with doctors and therapists about ways to get him to try different foods. He wasn't always like that. When he was a child, toddler, he was willing to try different kinds of fruits and veggies, but he just somehow grew out of things, and he has these phases where he'll eat something for a while and then he decides he doesn't like it anymore. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner look really different in my house. We could all be sitting down for dinner and have 4 different plates. It's just, you never know what you're going to get day to day. So, as I mentioned, Harper's in kindergarten, Noah's in 3rd grade. They both like to pack their lunches instead of buying, but even that looks really different for both of them. So if your kids or your grandkids pack, or even if they buy lunch at school, there are apparently some new changes when it comes to suggested nutrition options for kids. This is really interesting to me. I'm looking down because this was something that NBC4's Brett Mills reported on last week. And I found this really interesting, so I wanted to pass it along to you. So the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they have some new regulations when it comes to nutrition, and that includes lowering how much sugar is included in certain items during breakfast and lunch. So this will affect those of you who have kids who buy breakfast or have lunch at school. And it's really interesting how they've put limits on added sugar. So, like breakfast cereals, no more than 6 grams of added sugars per serving. Even something as simple as yogurt, no more than 12 grams. And then think about this flavored milk. So, that chocolate milk, strawberry milk that so many kids are offered during breakfast and lunch at school, no more than 10 grams of added sugar. So, overall, think the whole day, breakfast through dinner, the department recommends less than 25 grams of added sugars for children over the age of 2. So that starts pretty early. And apparently, this change is to align with some recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics, which, most of us are regularly sending our kids to pediatricians, and they're really concerned about kids' diets, not just in foods they get at school, but also while they're at home.
While this is going to affect sugar in school and what options they're going to have exposed to, we also know that kids bring lunches to school. So for parents who are packing lunches, it's going to be helpful to make sure they're looking at the sugar content in the foods that they're sending their kids. And again, trying to limit it to less than 25 grams of that added sugar. Things that you can do for that is trying to choose water, offering water instead of juices or soda, which are high in sugar, and then adding whole fruits to meals as opposed to like a sweet treat.
So it is super beneficial, I think for a couple of reasons. One, doing it in schools while kids are young really help them to develop habits early on in life so that they can apply that throughout their whole life, which affects their health. Specifically, diets high in added sugars increases the risk for developing some chronic diseases, specifically type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure.
Okay, so it's not just the sweet stuff, but apparently the salty too. So the USDA also plans to reduce sodium in lunches by 15% and then breakfast by 10%, and that's in 2027. So we do still have a little bit of time when it comes to that, but obviously things that parents should be thinking about according to, officials and leaders when it comes to nutrition, that's a lot of information. And when you're already bogged down with figuring out how to pack lunches, what to do for breakfast, that's a lot to consider. And that can add a lot to the load that you're already carrying. It can seem like a lot of extra work, too far out of reach. So I do want to say this first things first. Yes, these are suggestions and recommendations. All of this is for you to take in, but as I've always said, do what feels right for you and your family. You know what your kids need, you know what your kids like, you know how to communicate with your children. So just make sure that your kids are getting nutrition when and where they can. Like we like to give Noah smoothies that have spinach and protein, and he can't taste a thing, but he's getting the nutrients that he needs, even if he's a picky eater. He likes smoothies, so we figure out how to make that work. And then secondly, I feel your pain. I just want to let you know that, as I mentioned, I'm not excluded from all of this. So, what about those of us who have those picky eaters? We're trying to consider all of these different things. Well, coming up after the break, I'm going to have a chat with a pediatrician about picky eaters specifically and some very eye-opening and really helpful information for you and me alike. So, stick around. We'll be back with more on the Mother Load after this. Welcome back to the Mother Load. Of course, as I mentioned earlier this week, we are talking nutrition, and many of you, I'm sure, also, like me, have picky eaters in your house, whether they're 2 years old trying foods for the first time, or maybe they're in middle school. I have an elementary student who does not like to eat anything. Well, in preparation for this episode, I did just start to do just like a little bit of research on picky eating, good nutrition, healthy habits, all that good stuff. And I actually came across a really interesting article from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, that says good nutrition starts early. That's literally the title of the article. Some of the key points in that article are pretty obvious, like kids need fruits and vegetables daily for healthy growth and brain development. We know that, right? Early eating experiences can affect how we eat as we get older. Also seems pretty obvious as well. Encourage new foods when your children are young. I get it. But here's the thing. I don't disagree with that. In fact, I've done all of that with both of my children. But as I mentioned, my oldest recently became really picky. He grew out of wanting to try all of these different things. So I decided to enlist the help of an expert for some advice on how to handle that. And if you're in the same boat, then hopefully this conversation that I had with Dr. Miller will help you out too. One of the things that we have been discussing is nutrition. So I brought in Dr. Cameron Miller with Step by Step Pediatrics, Central Ohio Primary Care. Thank you so much for joining me to have a conversation about a topic that, no matter what age or stage, affects a lot of families. Again, that is nutrition. So, specifically, when it comes to that, young kids, we think a lot of as picky eaters. So, in your experience, I mean, do you see a lot of that? Is it selective? Is it genetic? What are some of the things we're talking about with that?
Yeah, and we do see a lot of it, and it can honestly vary by age. Some kids can be picky right from the get-go when we're doing foods before 1 year of age. Some kids, toddler age is a really common age where we see it.
Yeah.
But even kids school age can sometimes go through phases where they're more or less picky. Usually it's obviously a source of concern for parents, kind of creates some anxiety because obviously they want what's best for their kids. They want to make sure they're getting proper nutrition and things like that. But by the same token, there's nothing that they're doing wrong when their kid gets picky. It's a lot of it is very normal.
Yeah.
So trying to navigate that is something we try to do in several different ways, and we talk about it at pretty much every checkup. One of the main things we talk about is nutrition. So
Yeah, and I have noticed that with my two kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. My 5-year-old daughter is so willing to try anything and everything. She's a great eater when it comes to proportions. My oldest, though, my 8-year-old, he is extremely picky. And I've noticed over the years, even from that toddler stage to now, he's changed what he likes, what he doesn't like, and he's become a lot more selective. So, what are some of the things that you kind of suggest to parents who may be going through that same experience?
Yeah, I mean, the one of the things I try to talk to them about, or the phrase I give them is parents, they can control what, where, and when, and the kid is going to control how much they eat. Meaning every meal does not need to become a battle where you're like, you need to sit here for 3 hours and you have to clean the plate. And I always warn parents that kids will find ways around it where they won't eat, and then 20 minutes later they'll ask for a snack. And if you're not paying attention, all of a sudden the snack became dinner. But it just needs to be, the expectation is this is what we're having. We're only going to cook one meal. Parents do not need to become a short order cook. But it doesn't have to be like war every time. It's just, hey, this is what we have. And if you don't want it, fine. But when you're hungry 30 minutes from now, we're going to reheat your plate and we're going to put it back in front of you. Just to kind of, so that the kid also gets that very clear expectation of this is what happens. Just like there's other rules in the house. That's kind of the thing we try to limit. Like no screens, TV, distractions during mealtime. When it works for the family, trying to have meal times is always great. They'll realize obviously with parent schedule, sometimes it has to be a little bit more, hodgepodge at times. But those are some of the biggest things. The older they get, like especially like 3 years and up, we'll talk about we call like the no thank you bite. Like you just need to try a bite of everything. Doesn't mean you have to eat the whole pile, but we at least got to try it, and that's the expectation.
Yeah.
Because kids can have try something 30, 40 times before they maybe start to learn to tolerate it and then eventually learn to like it. So
Yeah.
just having that as kind of the routine, but it's also not like the parent has to have this anxiety about dreading every meal because they know it's going to be a fight. It doesn't have to be that. It's just a very clear expectation of what what the rules are.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice and a great point that you make about kids maybe taking 30 to 40 times of trying a food before they decide, okay, maybe it's not so bad. So I think a lot of times as parents, we're really hard on ourselves that, we kind of give up after a set number of times because like you said, we don't want it to become a battle. We become exhausted with it. But how important is it for you to kind of stress with parents like patience to keep up with it and maybe not always lose your nerve when you're trying to introduce a food to your child.
Right. And that's why I kind of say the more there's a common expectation, they don't feel like they maybe have to battle every time because the kid knows. And I've tell parents it is absolutely a long game. I mean, there's times where it's like the 10, 11, 12-year-old checkup where the parent will finally be like, they're finally trying stuff and they're getting out of wanting three foods every time.
Yeah.
So it's not like it has to fix itself by the time they're three. And they can kind of come and go. They could be good for a while and then they can kind of get a little bit picky again. So not being frustrated when it doesn't work right away, kind of celebrate the small wins. If like, okay, they're trying a few things. Sometimes it can change. It's something they like, they decide they don't like for a year and then they'll come back to it. So kind of just, small baby steps and things like that.
And what about too, kind of continuing to check in with your child's provider? I think one of the things my husband and I are constantly concerned about with our oldest and his pickiness is nutrition and making sure that he's getting what he needs and the right amount of what he needs. I mean, you kind of mentioned earlier that your kid's going to eat a certain amount. They don't need to clean their whole plate. They kind of know when they're filling up, right? How much of it is kind of trusting your child as well.
Right. Yeah. And that's even sometimes we'll talk more like even as infants, once they can start to self feed, we're like, do that as soon as you can so that they're not used to just passively having somebody shove a spoon in their mouth so that they're
Mhm.
listening to their hunger cues. Those kinds of things. That's also why we sometimes try to talk about like having set snacks because kids will absolutely try to graze constantly if you let them. And then they're never actually used to getting hungry enough to eat a full meal because they're always eating little bits all the time. So if we have like a set snack and yeah, okay, we're 40 minutes from dinner, we're not going to have a snack right now, the food's coming, they're more likely to be trying that because now they actually truly feel hungry as opposed to this constant, I'm just having little bits all the time. Snacks are good. I mean, your body's meant to have 4 or 5 kind of smaller meals or snacks, but
Mhm.
still having a little bit of a gap so you have time to be hungry come mealtime.
And what too about lunchtime, right? So we're, getting back to school. Parents may be packing and sending lunches with their kids. They may be buying at school, but there are parents who are concerned that I'm not there. I'm not able to see what they're actually doing with their food. Are they eating what I pack? Are they just throwing it away? Are they trading it with someone else? Does that patience kind of and that trust go into that as well?
It does. I mean, as a parent, especially once they get to school, yeah, you're not going to be able to control every second. Now, big picture, if they're doing some of that, is that going to make them horribly nutritionally deficient in something, no, they're going to still do fine. Obviously, checking in with them if they pack. Okay, what are they trying to occasionally look at what they're bringing home? Kind of having a conversation, even at mealtime, like, hey, did you eat your lunch? Did you swap out with somebody? Those kinds of things. Fortunately, with the meal plans, if you're getting at school, usually you know what they're getting charged, and all of a sudden they're going through their allowance all the time, and you're having to put more money on it than you know they're going back for extra cookies all the time. But yeah, just kind of having that conversation about what the expectation is always a good thing.
Perfect. Okay. And then just kind of to wrap things up for parents who may have young toddlers who are trying foods for the first time, to older children who they're still trying to navigate what they like, what they don't like, trusting what they're eating. What are kind of your overall messages for those families?
Like I said, big, and even celebrating some of those wins. So like if they do try something, let them know that you appreciate that, those kinds of things. Like I said, the more it's a high pressure environment where parents anxious, that means the kids anxious, and then that plate of food becomes a mountain that they're trying to conquer every meal. Just being straightforward with stuff, having a common set of expectations, but not being, like I said, a battle with it. And like I said, they're gonna do fine. I mean, our foods are fortified with things. They're not going to become like horribly nutrition or deficient if they're a little picky for a while.
Yeah.
But just kind of taking it, baby step and looking for the wins when you can get them.
All right. And real last question. I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from a medical professional. Where do you stand on bribery when it comes to food?
Try not to do it. So yeah, like the kid does not need to get a whole cookie because they tried one green bean. Those kinds of things. I'm all for positive reinforcement, big picture wise, but not like rewarding a bunch of unhealthy foods for trying a small amount of healthy food, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Just celebrating those little wins along the way. All right, Dr. Miller, thank you so much. I think our viewers are going to get a lot of helpful information and hopefully we're able to give them some peace of mind.
You're very welcome.
All right, be sure to stay tuned. So, coming up after the break, I'm going to have a chat with a lifestyle expert, but also a mom of five. Yes, a mom of five. She has some simple ways that we can take the stress and the chaos out of our morning routines. She's got some snack hacks, ways you can make a quick breakfast on the go with your kids, and some options to save time on weeknights as well. So, stay with us. We'll be back with more on the Mother Load after this. Welcome back to the Mother Load. We are continuing our conversation this week about back to school, but also nutrition and food options and what to do when it comes to picky eaters and very busy schedules. And I'm joined now by Shanasty Ireland, who is a lifestyle and food influencer, but also a mom of five. Shanasty, is that right?
Five, yes.
Oh my
yes.
goodness. So you know what it's like to have your hands full, your schedule is hectic. And I think a lot of parents are really feeling that, especially this time of year, just some days trying to get out the door. Maybe if you're going to school, to a sporting event, after school activities. So what are some of the things that, you're able to offer for parents to make life just a little bit easier when it comes to that?
Oh, I'm learning as I go. I've got to be completely honest, but it is pretty jarring because we've essentially had 90 days of just pure chaos, no
Yeah.
routines, no set bedtimes, eating whatever you want for the most part for most families. So now it's time to get down to business. So the first thing is to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Everybody is going through this complete shift to where it's all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I have 7 different after school activities and I have to pack a lunch and breakfast and dinner and snacks and all of that. So give yourself grace and then prepare as much as possible.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like a very simple tip, but I'm talking even if you have 30 minutes in the morning after the kids get on the school bus and you can take out all the vegetables and wash it and chop it for dinner or marinate the chicken or anything you can do. Make the spaghetti sauce ahead of time. Anything you can do ahead of time. And that also goes for the weekend too. I know for working parents, they're thinking, okay, the kids get on the school bus, I got to go to work. Well, spend some time on Saturday or Sunday to come up with that meal list, even down to the very details of the after school snacks and the breakfast. It's going to just kind of save you some sanity as the week goes on and all of a sudden it's Thursday and you're like, I don't know what to make. We're going through McDonald's drive-through. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point, right? Because I'm in this phase now where my kids are on two different schedules. So in the morning, I drop my daughter off, but then I have about 45 minutes before I need to leave for work. And I've started utilizing that time. and really just trying to prepare so that by the time I get off work, I'm not just overwhelmed and exhausted. That's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we can also use that time for other things, working out or taking a nap or reading a book. But if you can carve out a little small amount of time, let me just tell you, as you already know, by 5 o'clock, when something is done, even if it's as simple as chopping up an onion or marinating your chicken or preparing your pasta ahead of time, it's one less thing and it's going to kind of slide into the schedule a little bit easier. That way, you're not just completely freaking out when the kids get off the bus. And then, another thing I just want to mention really quickly is this is the time that you might not all be sitting down at the dinner table at the
Yeah.
exact same time. And that's okay too. You've got to figure out what schedule works best for your family. Are you serving the big meal at 4 o'clock when they get off the school bus and they're starving and then you're snacking later? Or are you giving them a snack in like a snackle box or something like that and then serving the big meal later? You've got to just kind of trial and error, figure out what works best for your family.
And I love that you said that. I was just thinking trial and error, give yourself
Mhm.
that grace the next few weeks to just figure out that routine. So when we're thinking of maybe some ways to make things a little bit easier so that maybe we're not always going through the fast food drive through, which can be really expensive if you have a big family. Maybe are there some like go-to snacks, some things that you like that parents may be able to try?
Absolutely. So breakfast is the most important. I'm going to start with breakfast because actually my 8-year old, he does not have lunch until 1 o'clock in the afternoon this year. So
Wow.
I've got to serve him a big hearty breakfast. I just love bacon, eggs, toast. You can even make this into an omelet. Interestingly enough, you can even put these in tortilla shells, stick them in the refrigerator or the freezer, and just nuke them for a couple of minutes or a couple, 30 seconds in the morning so they can grab and go. Anything that's easy for them. Some kids, when they roll out of bed, they're not ready to eat a meal such as this. So they need to have something that they can just kind of grab and go. I love protein bites as well. I make a bunch of those over the weekend and people can kind of snack on those as they go. Pork rinds in the snacks, actually, it's filled with protein. It's keto friendly and low carb. That's a really great thing. Rayburn sandwiches, these are great for after school snacks. You could pop them in the microwave for 90 seconds. And if we're talking about the actual lunches, protein, protein, protein. I know we hear it. I feel like we're just like inundated with protein lately, but it's so true because it fuels our minds. It helps give the kids energy and it's going to help them feel fuller longer, which is so critical. If they're having a 10 o'clock lunch or a 1 o'clock lunch, they've got to hold through all the way till they get home. And sometimes kids, mine included, are running off to do activities after school. So they've got to have that after school snack as well that's going to really push them through till dinner time.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. And just finally, I mean, this is a lot of information. And sometimes I think when you're, trying to figure out what works for your family, you're trying to get all of your kids back to school, homework and routines and curriculum nights and all this stuff. Parents like to have a place where they can just go to for a resource and find what they need. So, is there anywhere specifically we can go to get a little bit more information?
I have some stuff on my blog, she'sbecomingdomestic.com, and my Instagram at Shannesty Ireland. But most importantly, don't get so caught up in the social media because what you're going to see is influencers that have everything perfectly planned out. That doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work for me. I have 5 kids. I'm not going to pretend like behind the screen here it's not a mess. So just give yourself some grace and just try to figure out what works best. And also take into consideration you're gonna have crabby kids, crabby parents, all of that thing. Take the time on the weekend or maybe on a random Monday evening to kind of reset,
Yeah.
get with your family, figure out what's working, what's not, try to meal plan together and get the kids involved as much as possible. That way, if they're arguing about dinner, you could say, no, 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 you chose this dinner. So this is what we're having tonight.
I love that. That's fantastic. Shannon, thank you so much, not only for the information, the helpful tips, but also the transparency, because you're right. I think sometimes we're scrolling online and we're
Yeah.
seeing images that aren't entirely portraying the whole picture. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your honesty about that.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. And hey, we're all in this together. We're going to get through it. So.
We absolutely are. Thank you. And I thank you so much for your time today. As always, I hope we were able to give you a little bit of information to help lighten your load just a little bit this week. And as always, I'd like to leave you with a quote I found as well. This is from C.S. Lewis, and it says, "Children are not a distraction from more important work. They are the most important work. In the end, the legacy that matters won't be what you built in the world. It will be who you raised and whether they felt safe, seen, and loved in your presence." So I hope that you are able to carry that with you into this week as a reminder when things get a little bit tough raising our little ones. So have a great week. You got this, Mama, and we'll see you next time.